I think we don't go far enough. I think we should do what Dune talks about. I think we need to unplug the whole fucking internet. We need a Butterlarian revolution. Just fuck it. Get rid of the whole internet. Politics would be fixed. Dating would be fixed. So many problems that we're dealing with now would be fixed. Mental health would be fixed. All from the fucking internet. Let's unplug this bad boy. Experiment fucking over. And when Marshall says, isn't like the government doing that? That's fine. We can do a peaceful grassroots movement and destroy this machine. Thank you.
Well, I think it's going to be hard for you and I to go out there and pull the plug on the internet. It sounds like a great concept, maybe, except for the fact that it would kill this forum. And what would we do, ladies and gentlemen?
We'd have to.
What would we do without the critical thinking?
We all come to your home, Gary.
Yeah, we meet up at bars and places in person and be able to smell and touch each other again.
It's a great concept, but you don't believe it's going to ever happen or could happen.
No, I don't think it will. I think it's going to, centuries from now, it will be the death knell of all humanity. But, hey, what can you fucking do? It's just like the nuclear bomb, bad idea, but can't do shit about it.
I saw a headline today, and I will acknowledge that I did not read this story, but I think it's apropos to your point. And the headline said, humans used to control machines, not so much any longer, or something like that. So there's something to be said for that as well. And as Larry, my good friend Larry down there in the audience said to me in a text just before we started this, well, what about banning it for adults? And maybe he has a point, and you seem to be articulating his point pretty well there, Daniel. Thank you, and welcome back. Amir, followed by Jules.
Thanks, Gary. Hi, everyone. Yes, it's obviously a very difficult issue, topic, and I don't have, nobody has all the answers, but I think I have part of the answer, and I think that part of the answer is about digital savviness, and that comes through education. I actually think that digital savvy sort of curriculum framework that would kind of provide a kind of a structured pathway to sort of equip children with kind of not just the standard functional ICT, but also understand what they're facing, what the dangers are, what the critical data is, how has this thing has evolved, what are the safeties in terms of online safety skills, and how students or people can transition from sort of being a basic operator to sort of think about it in a sort of more critical way. And become capable digital citizens, basically. I think education is probably a big part of the answer here, rather than sort of limiting or banning, which I sort of philosophically disagree with, in all accounts. But just as everybody else is free, governments are also free to introduce curriculum into the schools at a very early age. In the UK, if I'm not mistaken, there is something called Essential Digital Skill Framework. There is an equivalent of that under EU as well. And these are very good techniques to sort of create little workshops for students. They're not well established, I must say. Some schools doing that, especially private schools. But it's not a very established, but it's definitely some steps are being taken towards that. And I think ultimately that's where we're going to end up, because it's definitely necessary. Things like, this YouTube, quick YouTube that you mentioned, or TikTok. There are many studies now that they've proved them to be extremely detrimental to mentally, just because by flipping through, you are actually training your mind not to concentrate, and you lose this lack of concentration, which you're going to need for just about anything that you want to do seriously in life, whether it's education or your work. So this kind of trains your mind away from that. And these things need to be sort of highlighted. And the best way you can do that is to do it at an early age in a classroom, create little groups like a workshop, ask the students themselves to actually do research online in front of the computers in the classroom, find out what the actual issues are, and the best way is to actually educate them. I think education. That's one of the prime ministers here a long time ago said. I forget who he was, but I think that is probably one of the best solutions to this very, very important problem.
Thank you for that, Amir. So as you spoke, I did a little further research. According to CBS News, approximately 24% of suicide deaths among children ages 10 to 19 are linked to high-risk digital technology and internet use, such as cyberbullying, algorithmic exposure to harmful content, or addiction. The CDC has published findings linking frequent daily social media use to significantly higher rates of persistent feelings of hopelessness, severe online bullying, and suicide ideation among high school students. A Journal of the American JAMA Network, a Journal of the American Medical Association Network study. It's a long-term study which tracked kids from the ages of 9 to 14. I'm reading this on the NPR site. It found that children who develop addictions to social media or mobile phones are significantly more likely to report suicidal thoughts and behaviors. One last one from the National Institutes of Health. An analysis of 9 international studies by the National Institutes of Health finds a clear independent association between heavy social media / internet use and increased suicide attempts in young people. These are very chilling results that are being reported by these various credible institutions. Thank you, Amir.
Can I add one?
Yes, Amir.
One other thing, Gary, and that is limitation. Obviously, is important. I mean, I've talked about we talked about sort of banning, but you can avoid banning, but you can basically limit. I totally agree with what Marshall said about not having the mobile. This is exactly what we did with our son. He could have it just basically. He could have his console, his mobile phone, his gaming, everything he wanted to do. It had to be in the playroom, and that would be right next to us where we were sitting, so we could see what he's doing. And he was never allowed to take the mobile phone or the console into his bedroom. When he went to the bedroom, it was basically books or either books or just go to sleep. That's it. So that limitation is very different to banning. And one other comment about the addiction. Addiction is not just about children, as I think you mentioned already. I got involved with a game that my son was playing. It's Clash of Clans. I think some people may know that. And this was about 10 years ago, maybe. Now, I just went in there anonymously because I just wanted to make sure that nothing is happening there, like grooming or anything like that. And of course, a few years later, he left the clan, and I'm still in there. I must say I have a pretty decent war base, though, but it just goes to show that addiction is not just for children, and you can actually get hooked on it too.
Thank you, Amir. My recommendation is don't allow yourself to be addicted to anything else on the internet except for the Critical Thinking Forum. Jules, followed by Brian.
How you doing, guys? I'm going to start off just agreeing with Marshall. Let parents be parents, and that's whose hands it should go into. But when you said supporting social media ban for children, to me, I thought you would say a social media ban for adults, for elderly adults. Who are the most financially scammed people in the world? I think it's elderly people. You want to draw the line to elderly at 60, 55, whatever. People new to the internet who don't have the skills that younger kids have. Financially, they're getting ripped off left and right. Children get ripped off too, but the point I guess you're trying to make, Gary, is that children have to develop with social skills with other children. They just go in their room, play on the computer, and go into social media. You're not meeting people. It's just very harmful. Everybody covered that who spoke before me. It's addictive. It's harmful. Suicidal. It destroys you. I know in New York here, you have my New York accent, so you know I'm from New York. The education system is so piss poor. There's really no education system. People don't read at the correct reading level. They don't know how to do math. They don't have any skills for history. They don't understand anything. They can't reason. They can't think. And I'm not saying everybody, but I'm saying most. It's at epidemic level. It's really bad. So I would say, and come on, let's admit, we all predicted when social media came out that it was going to be bad, and bad for children, bad for the elderly, bad for financially, susceptible people. My last thing, I'm going to close down by saying, I don't think that enough has been done to get the scammers, not only on social media, on all these other sites, except for Gary's Critical Thinking Forum, but also you get the scammers on telephone calls every day. I get at least 5 scams a day. I get called for insurance for cars I don't have or I never owned. I get fake calls from my child who was arrested because he was in a car accident. And, it wasn't him, of course. I mean, repeatedly. They want money from me. That's what's going on, too. And they're trying to get it from the children also. But the children are hurt in every way. And I'll land with that. They're hurt in every way. We're hurt in the scamming way. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, there's a television news anchor that just went public with how she got scammed, and she says she's embarrassed by it, but she feels that as a journalist, she owes it to her audience to give them to tell them how easy it is to get scammed. So anybody can get scammed for sure.
What kind of scam was it?
I didn't get into the details of the story.
Yeah, I had friends too. 10, 15, 20,000 gone. I mean, come on. Smart people. It's just it's a gut.
We do stories occasionally, Jules, about retired police detectives of all a target group who have been scammed. They're very slick. These people, they're very slick. And just imagine how much more difficult it is for these children. And somebody, Amir mentioned, which wasn't even part of this discussion, and probably should have been, and I was remiss for not raising it, the grooming of children on the internet. By giving your children free rein to all of this, you expose them to potential groomers. I was, as I've mentioned before, Alan was there with me. I was an administrator for another program. It's the grandfather of programs such as this one on Clubhouse. It was the first voice, video, and text chat program on the internet. And we wanted to protect the underage, the children. So we created a teen section where only teenagers were allowed to go in. And we put admins in there, moderators in there. We called them admins. to ensure that, they weren't being approached by predators. And we learned that, and this goes back to our initial discussion of good intentions, unintended consequences, that by putting the youngsters in one form in order to protect them, it attracted the pedophiles. And they were in greater danger as a result of our efforts to put them in less danger. So what appeared on the surface to be a good faith effort to protect children actually backfired and put them at great risk. And I learned this firsthand when my daughter, then in junior high school, wanted to go on the program because this is where Daddy was working. So I said, you can go on the program, but only with me by your side. So she created a nickname, Schoolgirl, was some number after it. And immediately, these adult males were hitting on her. I said, okay, well, this experiment failed. You're off the program. So I took over her account, and as an administrator, I had the ability to do this. Every adult who approached me, this was like To Catch a Predator, I would ban them from the program. And it was like a full-time job. I'm not kidding you. How many other children were being approached in such a manner? It's really a very, very, very dangerous world out there on the World Wide Web, as we used to call it. Thank you, Jules, for your contribution.
And thank you for that story. I'm shaking my head, Gary. Unbelievable. Keep up the good work, buddy.
Well, fortunately, I don't have that problem here on Clubhouse, but it was a major problem over there. And it wasn't the fault of the platform. They were just, it was just people will find ways. And social media, the internet, opens the door to those ways. Thank you, Jules. We'll go to Brian, followed by Daryl.
Yeah, just a couple things. The first one being that I definitely agree there's a problem, but I don't know that a full social media ban is a good idea, because there's a lot of good sites out there too. Goodreads is one of them, to allow kids to get textbooks access and things like that to some areas that wouldn't normally easily get access to them. So I think that they need to go after the companies and hold the companies responsible to making sure that they're making their sites safe and protecting people. And then I also think that when they do catch people, they need to give out harsher punishments. I don't think the punishments have been harsh enough for the time. The example you just gave, like, when they've gotten past people and gotten to children, they need to get serious time.
Yeah, and I am not certain what all the impediments to all this is. Part of the problem is this. So the victim is in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but the perpetrator is in, I'm not going to mention another country, but it could be another country, even complicating it. But the perpetrator is in Louisiana. Whose jurisdiction does this crime occur in? The victim is in one state, but the perpetrator is in another. This is across state lines, and I guess you could say this is a federal case,
Sure.
But we know that our federal agents are very busy with other issues right now, and they're not, I don't think they have the ability to be attentive to that problem. So I think that's why a lot of these cases go unresolved. I think the To Catch a Predator approach, which of course Chris Hansen, who I, by the way, know pretty well because we worked together in Detroit. But Chris, what he's doing, well, that's being replicated by various law enforcement agencies. So if it's a person who takes it to the point of wanting to meet the child, then you can localize the jurisdiction. And they absolutely have the right to make an arrest under those circumstances, even if the initial contact was made elsewhere. So I'm thinking of a case that I covered where the undercover officer posing as a child was in Wayne County, Michigan, and the perpetrator was in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, and the perpetrator offered to come across the border to meet the child. So the perpetrator came across the border and purchased a motel room in Taylor, Michigan, and they nabbed him, even though there was not a victim. There was no victim in this crime. There was an intent, but there was no victim because he was talking to an adult human being. He was not talking to a child, but he thought he was talking to a child. The law allows, believe it or not, for there to be, because of the intent, a prosecution. So they nabbed him actually in the parking lot of this motel. They opened up his glove box and they found condoms in the glove box, which in their mind and the prosecutor's mind showed intent, and they successfully prosecuted this guy. So under those circumstances, the question of jurisdiction isn't so much of an issue. If it's trading in graphic material across state or international boundaries, it becomes a much more difficult situation. It's hard. I know from my experience as an administrator on that program, Brian, if we detected somebody in one state or one country participating in underage visual materials with somebody in another state or another country, it was difficult, depending on what country of origin this was occurring, to get cooperation with the authorities. In some cases, they were right on top of it, but in other cases, they were not. And I would talk to law enforcement in my capacity, and they would say, "Sir, we appreciate your concern and we don't disagree with you, but ... You know, your victim is in the United States. I'm here in whatever country he was in or she was in." And so they didn't see that they had jurisdiction. It's a very difficult situation. It's not as easy to resolve as one might think. Thank you, Brian.
Gary, can I make one quick follow-up comment? So my daughter, she's about to be in college now, so I need to get rid of it. But I had the resources to pay for an app that monitored her phone, all of her social media. It would send up red flags if inappropriate photos were sent out. It would send red flags if she was viewing inappropriate stuff. And most of the time, I didn't need to use it, but it was worth the amount of money I paid for it. And the sad part is everybody doesn't have those resources to pay the extra money. And if I'm correct, don't hold me to this number, but I think social media revenue last year was like over $260 billion. I feel like a percentage of that could go to what you're talking about. Take those resources and create something that can help monitor some of it. Maybe not all of it, but catch some of it. But that's all I was going to say.
Brian, if you want to recommend that particular...
that parents can't parent, and therefore, you know, like you mentioned, the nanny state. Yeah, it's also this alarmism in a sense, right? So I remember when my niece turned 7 and she started playing video games, and at the time it was this outrage. Video games are causing violence. Sometimes when there would be these incidents in schools, they were actually trying to look into whether some of these young boys were playing games like Call of Duty or Battlefield or some of the things that ultimately, over a period of time, it's been shown that there's no real link between violence in video games and actual violence in society. Now, they did say that some of these games might lead to quote unquote aggressive thoughts, but no actual correlation to taking violence off the screen. And isn't some of this, shouldn't parents, let me rephrase that, shouldn't parents know their kids in a sense? Shouldn't parents, if you have 2 kids, be able to, maybe by the time they reach 9 or 10, or, be able to say, hey, maybe he's okay with the video games, but he's not. He shouldn't be, meaning like maybe he would be okay with social media, but he wouldn't. Or she would be okay with social media, but he wouldn't. Are we saying as a collective group, like as a society, that, people can have kids, but people aren't capable of actually raising kids to be productive adults? Or people aren't, you brought up the example of how, parents would put their kids in front of the television as they were doing other things in the house. Is it that this is the new way of doing the same thing? In a sense, I saw a funny meme the other day, and it said, I had kids just to drive them to activities. And I thought it was sarcasm, and a buddy of mine, he pointed out to me, and he said, well, no, it's because parenting isn't really about parenting. It's just about activities. It's softball. Here where I am, there's a Taekwondo studio. And right after school, there's like 100 kids coming down the block with their Taekwondo uniforms on. And they're doing Taekwondo right after school till about 7 or 8 o'clock at night. So it's where do parents come in, and parenting comes into play, is what I would ask.
So to your comment about possibly some of this is alarmist, what say you to the statistics that I previously read off from the various credible organizations who have studied this, who do find causation?
So I think we haven't had enough time to analyze enough data. Now, I'm not saying that it's untrue. I'm more saying, have we studied this enough to definitively say that it is absolutely true? And what is the solution? Is the solution to tell parents or ban these things? How many, like you ban this, right? How many parents are going to acquiesce and then do the login for the kid and then hand the device back to the kid anyway? It's I don't think these things create actual obstacles to what we're saying we're trying to prevent, because I do think there are a lot of parents who will move past that ban or past this block and hand the device back to the kid. So I don't disagree with what the study is saying. I'm saying, have we actually studied it long enough to kind of definitively say that this is true or not true?
I will point out that one of the studies that I quoted, they say it's a long-term study. Now, I don't know what long-term means and whether it satisfies your questions. I think, at least anecdotally, we can say there are suicides. A lot of them are by teenagers, are linked to cyberbullying, and I don't think we should be ignorant of that. And I think that any primary, secondary educator who might be listening or participating in this forum would probably, based on their experiences, second that emotion, as the saying goes.
So again, I'm not even saying I disagree with you, but I'm saying where does parenting come into this, in a sense, right?
But Daryl, if you allow your child, and maybe, you're saying that when, Billy and Janie go to school, they should not be allowed to take their phones with them, or they're not allowed to have smartphones. They have to have flip phones, which, by the way, sometimes results in a degree of bullying in real life as well. But at any rate, is that what you're recommending that parents do?
Well, no. Because what I'm saying,
if you allow them to have an iPhone, and at what age do you allow it? Because we're talking about high school students who are committing suicide. So you're going to say that a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old or a 15-year-old is still too young to have an iPhone? How do you protect your child? Are you going to say, I screwed up as a parent because I allowed my 15-year-old to have an iPhone finally? I don't know if it's as easy a proposition as you suggest. Again, that's an anomaly what's going on next door to me. Those kids, none of them have phones. And I've discussed the parenting. We just have chats, the mother and the father and I fully understand their approach. I mean, they're homeschooling their children, which also helps reduce the bullying aspects. Some people will say, but what about the social interaction that they are losing? These kids get a lot of social interaction after school, by the way. They're very popular, and all the kids in the neighborhood are in front of their house wanting to hang out with these kids. So, but at any rate, but there are outliers. Most children the age of their children I know have smartphones.
But is it bad to, so my niece is 16, she goes to a small all-girls school up in Connecticut. They check their phones in when they go into the school. They get their phones back at lunch. When lunch is over, they have to check their phones back in. They're put in a little locker, and they get their phones back at the end of the day, right? So it's there are some systems that seem to be trying to figure out a way to do this, is what I'm saying. And I don't think being an outlier is a bad thing necessarily, is all I'm trying to say. I'm not arguing.
I agree, and as I said earlier, that strategy by schools, I think, is at the minimum what can be done, and very prudent. Thank you, Daryl. If I have an emergency and I need to get a hold of my kid, I call the office, and the office goes to the classroom.
To the classroom, yes. Yes.
Pulls the kid out. If the kid has an emergency, they're going to call me. The child does not need in the classroom a phone. You're absolutely right. The parents who come up with that argumentation, what are they thinking? I don't understand that thought process. I applaud that school in Connecticut, Daryl. Ching, followed by Mickey.
Hi, Gary. Hi, everybody. I don't really have a very smart answer. I just have to be sort of reflective, and I agree many of the people were talking about this issue. There's no one method will fit all, but I believe parent has responsibilities. parent needs to be educated. Parents need to set example, not use their iPhone, their smartphone all the time. And when I go to dinner with some people, even 2 people or 3 people, small group, still somebody is looking at their phone quite often. It's really bothers me. Yeah. So I think that adults has to. It's like it. I'm so glad you talk about this subject because it's not talked enough. I don't think about that because my child is already big enough, and for when he was in college, he has to do a competition, and then he told me himself. He said, "Mom, I turned off my social media for entire 1 month. I didn't touch it." And guess what? He won. He won the first prize in Juilliard viola competition, So that is something I didn't ask him to do. But I'm just thinking from younger time, if you have kids 5, you need to control yourself. You as parents, you need to control yourself. So you need to set example. If the parents are not aware of this problem, and it's very hard to navigate. And then of course in New York, right now, you have to go into school, put your phone into a cubby or somewhere, and then get it after school. That's great. Now, another thing is, I think we're sitting on our ass too much and looking at the phone. We need to encourage our kids to do, like, I don't know the statistics, okay? They need to go play soccer. They need to go play tennis. They need to go whatever, play the violin, they need to stand up to play. So I think that we're not, I would encourage our, younger generation to do physical exercise. In that sense, you're not going to holding the phone and, doing social media and being bullied or whatever, feeling stressed out or depressed or whatever. But, in the other hand, like other people talk about, internet has, we get information so quickly, we learn things. It's not everything is bad, right? I watch YouTube a lot, to learn stuff. So yeah. Anyway, so my suggestion is we parents needs to be more responsible. And of course, a lot of people here are not parents, but think about it. If you become a parent, or if your uncle, if your aunt, you do, and minimize using the device. Yeah. Thank you.
So you bring up a point that has not been mentioned previously, and it's an excellent one, Ching, and that is that we as the adults should be leading by example. And as you know, I drive a conversion van, and I learned, one of the first things I learned when I first started driving a van was you can look into the cars that pass you. Usually they're passing me. I'm not passing them because you can't drive like Mario Andretti when you're driving a van. And so many people, while they're driving, are texting. Forget about talking on the phone. They're texting. You mean whatever's on that phone, it could not wait until you're at a safe location to text? So how can we expect our children to do better when they see moms and pops doing this? I've got some breaking news, and I don't offer it to change the topic only because I want to keep everybody informed of important developments no matter what we're discussing. Reuters just moved a story. Thank you, Larry, for bringing it to my attention, that the U.S. military has launched strikes against Iran. You know that yesterday, or this past overnight, depending on what time zone you're in, the Iranians attacked a Qatari-flagged ship carrying, I believe, liquid petroleum through the Strait of Hormuz, hugging the coast of Oman, and set it ablaze. Hit it on the port side. So here's the Reuters bulletin. The U.S. military has launched a series of strikes against Iran, U.S. Central Command said Tuesday, adding that the strikes were in response to what it said were Iranian attacks on 3 commercial vessels that were transiting the Strait of Hormuz. Quote, U.S. Central Command forces have begun launching a series of powerful strikes against Iran to oppose heavy costs for targeting and attacking commercial shipping, a U.S. military statement said. Continuing the quote, Iran's demonstrated aggression was unwarranted, dangerous, and a clear violation of the ceasefire, it added. It was unclear what specifically the U.S. targeted, but Iranian media said 6 projectiles hit the area of, Alan will correct me if I'm mispronouncing this, Tarui Pier in Sirak in southern Iran. I apologize again if I mispronounced that. This marks the first known U.S. military strikes against Iran since late last month, when there were several days of strikes and counterstrikes between the two. So there's that very important bulletin. Shane, great points to be made. We should be leading by example. Mickey, followed by David.
Gary, there's news relevant to you that I'll say briefly, which is don't go to 42nd and 3rd because the Pfizer building is in danger of collapse.
So let me bring folks up to date on that one. The old Pfizer building, which is a tall steel office building on 42nd Street, yes, one of the main arteries cutting through Manhattan. On the east side, not far from the United Nations, they were converting it from an office building to residential. So, they want to get their bang for the buck. So the cranes have been out there, and they have been adding floors to the top of the building. Well, you should go online and take a look at this. They came into work today, and they found that the steel beams on the 21st floor were buckling. I'm presuming, I'm not a structural engineer, it has to do with the added weight above, which I would presume the people adding the floors would have understood the load that the building could tolerate. And now the building is in danger of collapsing. Now, they've initially said collapsing, but they've now modified it to say partial collapsing. But while they were in there inspecting it, the building was literally moving. So not only did they evacuate the building, of course, but for a wide area on either side of the building, everything is evacuated. And of course, on ground level, a lot of those are retail establishments, but there are tall buildings, some of which are office buildings, but some of which are people's homes, their apartments, and they've been forced out of their apartments. And it is a terrible, terrible F-up by somebody. And thank God they caught this. Can you imagine if it had collapsed with people inside, with people going past on that busy thoroughfare? God forbid. Holy freaking camoli. I can't wait to hear who's responsible for all of this. And if I was the person insuring that project, talk about suicide, I wouldn't need social media for me to consider that. Whoa, that's going to bankrupt the insurance company. There are going to be a gazillion claims as a result of this terrible, terrible screw-up. Back to the topic, however.
The people involved all deserve to go bankrupt, and I'll be succinct, as I always am, Gary. On Clubhouse, people always complain about how long construction projects cost these days and say, the Hoover Dam was completed quickly and the Golden Gate Bridge was, and that's all true, but what every single person on Clubhouse forgets is all those past construction projects completed quickly killed 50 to 100 workers. So I'm happy we're living in today's time.
And it's a different type of construction. When my son was going to Fordham, he was living off campus in a pre-war building. And I'm telling you, the walls are thick. I mean, you can pound your fist against the wall. Your neighbor's not going to hear a damn thing. These buildings were built, baby. They were built, and they still stand, and they still withstand. This is nonsense what's going on there. But let's get back to the topic.
Okay, so I'll be succinct. I feel like I spent my time on construction. So the bottom line is social contagion is real, and if children use social media, they will pick up some self-destructive things, maybe even deadly things. It is the responsibility of parents to control their kids' social media usage. Every parent should, and it's not the government's job. The government should play no role. Parents should play every role. I'm done speaking, Gary. Thank you for a great.
Thank you for that, Mickey. David, followed by Andrew.
All right, thank you. Well, several things I wanted to say. Number one, Mark Zuckerberg has said he doesn't let his kids on Facebook or use social media. So he has an understanding about the addictiveness or the issues that can happen with social media. And there's several other, tech, entrepreneurs who founded social medias who have said the same thing. They're not letting their own kids use the very platforms that they have created, which may contribute to some of the issues that have been talked about here. But another thing that people don't talk about as much is the number of parents who either exploit their own children on social media, often starting with creating their social media accounts for their kids when the kids are just born, right? Already securing the handles. But there's a whole category of people. They're on YouTube, they're on TikTok, they're on Instagram, and, they're doing the, they say, oh, I have twins, and everybody thinks their twins are pretty, so they just put them all over the social media, right? Because they can make money off of their kids that way by showing, cutesy photos or showing them do interesting little things. You have the other group where it's like the whole family is on the, living, kind of doing their own little mini reality TV show, a lot more on YouTube, but living it out. So you have the parents themselves who are using the platforms as a way of being able to bring in revenue and make money. There's an interracial family where they have like about, 11, 12 kids, and they show their whole family and their whole whatever edited version they put up there of their life on it. So you have a lot of adults themselves, adults with children, who have found that social media, is, definitely a place for them to be able to, go ahead and make money. So they doing the self-exploitation of their kids. They don't even really give their kids time to grow into being a young adult. Or start growing into being a child to even get to the point of knowing whether or not this is something they might want to do long term. They're just taking that choice for them. So, that itself is a problem. Should the government get involved and do it? I would say, like some of the other people here, no. I don't think the government should be the one getting involved in regulating it. I think that it should be left up to the parents. But I wouldn't be against the idea if parents, or certain things are happening due to kids being on social media and the parents weren't doing their job. I wouldn't be against extending the idea of neglect charges toward the parents, for engaging in some kind of neglect, for something that's extremely serious, right? That happens. And that's within the parents' control. I'm not against the schools doing some of that Daryl was mentioning where, you don't have your social, they take your smartphones while you're in class, and then when you get out, you get your smartphones back and get access back to that afterwards. I'm not against any of that kind of stuff. I think you can give right schools, public or private schools, to be able to determine whether they want the kids to have access to that. But ultimately, all of this is in the hands of the parents, and somebody just needs to talk to these parents out here who are getting their kids social media platforms once soon as they're born, and the parents who are out here exploiting their kids for money on the social media platforms. That's all I got to say.
Hey, piece of
David,
space. You have to wait for your turn, Rambo. It's one at a time here. So, David, you bring up also a point that had not previously been discussed. So I appreciate your contribution. Andrew, followed by William.
Yeah, did you say my name? I couldn't hear you.
If your name is Andrew, I did. If it's not, I didn't.
Okay, well, it's actually, I have 3 names, but I'll go with Andrew.
Okay, thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, well, first off, iPhones have parental controls on them. You can avail yourself of them any time to ensure that your child is, you're monitoring what they're doing, et cetera, lock out certain programs. Secondly, I just wanted to mention that although this didn't happen to a child, it happened to me. I got a phone call from a friend who said my image from my Facebook account was in an advertisement for Meta glasses, which I use because they're hooked up to my phone and they act as my a resource for my blindness. But I didn't approve of it or agree to it. They just used it because it's on there and it's theirs. My picture is theirs. They own it. So this is some of the dangers of social media. Thirdly, I got a call.
Wait a minute. Who owns it? So you're saying the social media site. When we, I just want to get to the nuance of this. So when you, which social media site? Facebook. Facebook. That's what I thought. So when we download Facebook, we don't read the terms of service, but we accept them. And in the fine print, it says that anything we publish on Facebook, they have the rights to.
Yes.
So then they see, or it may have come from the other direction, the company that manufactures the device sees that you're using their product, and they like the image. So they go to Facebook, or Facebook might approach them and say, hey, we own this, the rights to this. Would you like to buy them for your advertising? Or they say, we want to use it for our advertising. How much will it cost us? And because of you posting your photograph, you have made Mula Shmula for Zuckerman, who, of course, we have to be considerate of because he's just barely making ends meet.
Yes, and to the point here, the glasses are called Meta, so it's Meta AI, which is Facebook. It's already its own the same company, basically. So they just, are using it regardless.
So you must be a good-looking guy for them
I'm
to.
extremely handsome.
That's the reason why. So I would take it as a compliment.
And it looks like it's probably just targeted to her because she saw other ones with other people in them. I don't know that it's a widespread thing that my picture's way out there going out for Meta, but it could be, but I don't know. But anyway, that's kind of disturbing. The third thing is I got a phone call from a random number. I checked out the number where it was from. It was from Newfoundland, and it was not innocuous. It was just, will you be coming to yoga tomorrow with me, Anna? So I just wrote back, I'm not Anna, because I knew it was Newfoundland, so I'm thinking, okay. So I said, I'm not Anna, blah, blah, blah. And then the conversation continued to the point where this person wanted to become a pen pal. And this is the danger of these phones. And it's like, well, I don't know who you are. I just know that you're in Newfoundland. Perhaps, maybe not, because these numbers can be hijacked. So, no, not happening. So I just wanted to say those 3 things. The next thing I want to say is that in Canada, in Ontario, and federally, or CSIS or whatever. So this is already happening. And of course, we do have a cell phone ban during school hours, unless it's required for the curriculum. And the educational portion will start at grade 1 through grade 8, so that they're getting an early start. They're not getting it at home already, which I doubt to a large degree. I do not think that the parents, like you're talking about people driving around texting, that's fairly common, I think. And so I don't really trust parents to regulate their children because, like I said, you already have controls on your phone. If you really wanted to institute parental controls, you can, but how many people do? So anyway, that legislation's out there, and I think it's a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. It's, a good reminder that there are parental controls on these devices. That's an excellent point that you raised. William, followed by Rambo.
So I have children. One of them is a millennial, another one is Gen Z. And one of the things I did for them was teach them not to disclose details about their identity. And I also created identities that did not correspond to reality for them to use to obfuscate who they are and where they are, so that they did not have to appear as themselves in every online interaction. But I taught them about the desirability and the dangers of, the desirability of withholding or hiding information, and the dangers of disclosing information. So that's part of the education I tried to make them aware of, and I facilitated that by helping them create identities that don't disclose who they are, but actually confuse who they are presenting themselves to be, should they choose to do that. Certain things, by posting the photographs and things like that, invariably disclose a lot more information that might be desirable, like Facebook, like Instagram. Meta products are geared towards disclosure of a lot of information. However, you can sign up for Facebook and Instagram with alternate IDs. For example, you can you can get alternate email addresses. Some of them, you can get an email address. Normally they would say, well, give me your old email to get a new email. But there's certain providers. There was one that was in Switzerland for a while that didn't require you to disclose an old email to get new email. And then from that, you could leverage into getting other IDs, which are not automatically disclosed and locked into your original email address tied to a SIM card.
So how does that protect the children?
Because then my children don't have to disclose or divulge who they are or where they are necessarily.
Well, what's the other point? Because they want to be able to talk to their friends.
Well, that's why I said that there's an inherent problem with talking on apps like Instagram, with posting the photos, or Facebook, because they collect and divulge too much information. However,
by the way, Waymo, to your point, the parents are promulgating this. I know parents who post everything their little children are doing, and they post everything that they are doing. Some people who I know quite well, I know when they're, it's date night for mom and dad, and I know where the children are and what they're doing, because it's all there on the internet. Mom and dad willingly give that information out, and it's great because I'm close to this family and I get to see what they're doing. But it's not just their close circle of friends that are seeing it. The world is seeing it, including people who are very, very bad people, who I'm sure peruse the internet looking for opportunities to take advantage of such security lapses promulgated by the parents.
I became aware of this sometime around 2007 as a real potential danger. If you take a look at my Facebook account, you'll see that a lot of the divulging of personal information about me and my family was really curtailed or eliminated in the mid-2000s. So that, there's some pictures of me with my kids when they're really little floating around out there, but I did not keep updating it for that very reason. And I think the use of IDs which And personas which mask the identity can also be helpful to children, including not giving out their correct date of birth or place of birth or things like that. Just really trying to throw the dogs off the scent to some degree. So I think that's helpful. But they have themselves chosen to divulge their own information as they get older, and that I have no control over.
Remember, as I mentioned before, when we download these programs, we agree to providing to the programs our personal information. They know they know what kind of women I appreciate, what kind of politics I appreciate, what kind of clothing I appreciate, what kind of food I appreciate. It's all there. And it's there when it comes to all of us. We have set ourselves up by accepting these quote-unquote free programs and to them having more information about us than we may even realize about ourselves, that we may realize ourselves about ourselves.
Which
right?
is why I created identities that intentionally published false information about myself and my kids, including the dates of birth and other things, to actually make it harder so that when they use the alternate identities, the legal, it's not illegal, it's a legal alias. It's not an illegal alias because it's not being used for some nefarious criminal purpose. But when they use the alternate identities, then they don't automatically give up all the information about themselves if they choose to use, or if I choose to use the alternate personas on the internet. And sometimes people hide their identities, and for good reasons. So, there's a certain amount of control and privacy you can try to take to some degree, take back for yourself by actually giving out false information about your demographics at the outset when you open the accounts. And for example, I can if I use an email base in which I don't have to disclose an old email address, then that connection is severed. I'm not saying that the government can't figure out who I am or make the deductions about who's operating what device, but just the casual criminal or casual pervert might be thrown off the trail. So you don't have to always divulge complete, accurate, and truthful information. Sometimes it's advisable not to do so. Also, when you look at the broad-based experiment of governments restricting internet access and so forth, Russia has a new program which all citizens are obliged to download onto their mobile devices called MAX, M-A-X, so that in order to get the social services, to the extent that they're getting any social services now, they have to go through the government program, and they've started to restrict the use of Telegram and try to shut that off, which was very popular with the Russians and countries like Iran and other countries have the a firewall.
In addressing the question of protecting the children, right?
Well, protecting the children means that if you have your children use accounts which don't give out their age, say that they're 10 years older than they are, or don't give out their address, or don't give out their
Yeah, but they all want to put selfies. Everybody wants to put selfies out there.
And that's why I said the biggest problem is Instagram. Well, that sort of thing.
Well, none of these kids want to not put selfies. And adults are the same. Thank you, William. We'll go to Rambo, followed by L.
Hey, peace to the space. So, I'm very familiar with this topic. My thesis is based on, and whereas I contend that toxic content is having a negative impact on human behavior. And so in that scenario that was just laid out, I have 3 points I'm going to make. I think that we now are at a period where we simply have to onboard our children into social media. It's the same thing as teaching them how to ride a bike or tie their shoes, right? There has to be a process, there has to be a conversation had before they even go on to social media. And that conversation needs to be a straight, direct understanding the negative impacts of, how to manage your digital footprint, what this means. Like, they need to understand the consequences and the perils associated with social media, just straight up, right? And so, I work with young children, and one of the programs that we've had, maybe a year, 2 years ago, the assistant principal asked that we change our curriculum to mitigate the conflicts that youth are having via social media. And so that's what's happening on social media. It's like the Wild Wild West at this point. And so we did shift our curriculum up, and we are having conversations with younger students about social media. Today, I realized, and this is an interesting topic, which is my second point that I wanted to. I knew I saw it somewhere. So, in today's Wall Street Journal, there's an article that I read. I just came about it. It was pretty interesting, and it talks about how I believe in Texas. In Texas, the Supreme Court has just made a ruling that that parental. Oh, here it is. It's on what page? It's 814 of today's journal. It says parental consent in the smartphone age. And I'll just read the first paragraph. The dam seems to be breaking on legislative efforts to protect children on the internet. On Monday, yesterday, the Supreme Court declined to block a Texas law requiring app stores to verify users' age with the system of parental consent for those under 18. None of the justices expressed a dissent. I repeat, none of the justices that ruled on this expressed dissent. So, and that's a good thing, because parents want to be able to protect their children. And I think as our moderator Gary has indicated, there's no such thing as free. There's no such thing as a free app. The currency for the app is allowing them to monitor your digital footprint. Maybe not your personal information, that kind of thing, but certainly they can monitor your activity, your engagement with photos, everything. They can monitor. And behavioral scientists can use that information to predict behaviors. They can geotag it. They can do just a lot of things with it. So there is no such thing as a free app. And so it becomes more important to us to manage our digital footprint, to mitigate the negative impact of toxic content and other concerns, inappropriate approaches to young underage children. So yeah, I just wanted to contribute to it, and that's why this title caught my attention. So thank you for allowing me to speak, Harry.
Thanks for that contribution, Rambo. Very informative. L, followed by Moose.
Hi there. Yeah, this is a really important topic. I personally believe that it's really important to grossly limit our kids' access to social media for all the reasons we've been talking about. The question of whether, who should have the jurisdiction in terms of supporting them. When we look at a word like ban, then I wasn't in the room earlier, so I don't know if there's a story here about who's actually banning it, whose hands those decisions are made. I mean, I know that there are, like, I think in California they passed a law where kids, have to like drop their cell phone in a box before they go into the classroom and things like that. The question about, is this something that is the parents' jurisdiction? Is it something that's the schools? I can only say that I am 1,000,000% in favor of having 0 cell phones in school. I think it's first of all, it's a nightmare for teachers. Teachers can't teach because no matter, even when kids are saying they're looking at this or they're working on that, they're not. I mean, maybe they are, maybe they're not, but it's a distraction. And we know that because we are doing the exact same thing. Right now, I just checked it out. Presently, 69% of American kids between the ages of 13 and 14 have cell phones. And even at the age of 9, it was like 20%. So, it goes up with age, but even 13-year-olds are so susceptible and so vulnerable when it comes to body image, when it comes to competition, when it comes to self-esteem. All that stuff that kids go through puberty is just so exacerbated when you start talking about things like TikTok and Insta and things like that. What do about it? Well, I would say, first of all, as a parent, I mean, my kids are, millennials. One of them is a stepmom to 4 kids, and they have 16-year-old twins. So at this point, at the age of 16, there's not a whole lot they can do other than try to guide them properly. But their screen time has been really, really, really limited from the time they were really young. I mean, they've been begging for it and begging for phones and begging for all of it for years. And it's absolutely correct what William said about, I think it was William who said that, there are, maybe it was Amber who said that there are, parental controls, absolutely. And even if you want on Facebook to, put a picture of your kid's bar mitzvah or their birthday party or whatever, you can also control who's going to see it. So there is a control on Facebook for, do you want this to go to the public, or do you want this to go to one person, or do you want to go to your small friend group? So there are some things you do have agency over, for sure. But I think the bigger question for me is, the culture, the world that we're living in. I mean, on the one hand, I'm delighted that I'm staring at a screen and I'm seeing all of you and hearing all of you, and that's a beautiful thing. But by the same token, we are addicted. And, this lifestyle we now are in, where we are scrolling mindlessly and getting pulled into endless rabbit holes, I mean, I question what that's doing to the quality of our lives. I question what that's doing to our ability to actually think, because those hours are wasted hours and they're not time spending. They're just being receptive. They're being passive, which also then brings up the question of what kids are getting in terms of information, because in the same way that the stuff that we're consuming, we don't know what's true or false, our kids are seeing the same stuff, and they certainly don't have the critical thinking capacity that I would hope we do. So I would say, as parents, it's just urgent, really. I would use the word urgent, that we're aware of our kids' use of social media. At the moment, my 4 grandchildren are at camp for 8 weeks, and their phones are at home. There's 0 devices allowed at their camp. They are running around being kids, going on camping trips, canoeing, being in plays, and they couldn't be happier. And it tells you something about what happens when you're not, connected to this, and when you're not pulled into the whole, toxic and addictive social media world, especially of influencers and who they think is, has credibility. I mean, you can't expect kids to sit there and go, well, now who is that person, and what gives them any authority, and what do I really think about that? And they're showing me how they are on this drug and they lost all this weight. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I mean, we don't do that. How do we expect kids to do that? We are literally standing by and watching them. And I think we're doing it as some kind of part of it at this point is addiction and habit, but part of it is that we have a very lonely society. I mean, this really, is very connected, I think, to COVID. And, when Facebook started, it was, and when the internet started, it was amazing. It was like, my God, this is like Alexandria. How fantastic. When Facebook started, it was a wonderful way to connect. And I still like connecting on it. I still like knowing what my friends are up to. But its connection to Instagram and TikTok and and the many, many other social media platforms. I mean, there's so much that's good. I don't want to dismiss the good. There's so much incredibly educational material that's out there, entertainment that's out there, music that's out there, literature that's out there, and it's our source of news. But we have to be able to vet that news. We have to be, critical thinking. So those are my feelings about it. I think it's an incredibly important topic.
Thank you, El. We'll go to Moose, followed by Harsh.
Hello, guys. Thank you for the
Moose, followed by Harsh. Moose.
Thanks, Gary. Yeah, I'll try to keep it relatively short. I'll reiterate some of the things that El had mentioned, particularly how vulnerable teens are with body shaming, and I mean, adults are, for God's sakes, keeping up with the Joneses, let alone teens and their insecurity. And I think it's been magnified by social media. It's not to say that no good can come out of social media for teens. But while I've been listening, I pulled up the CDC site, and I guess they did a study a few years ago in 2023, and probably not a huge shock that with the increase of social media that we have seen a significant spike in teen suicide from cyberbullying, and just keeping up with your peers and your classmates. There's a whole documentary series, I think, called Deadly Social Influence, that chronicles each episode is a separate documentary about big social influencers that are mostly in their teens, maybe early 20s, that need a tragic ending. So I think it's, to say just to ban it, I don't think history will show that works well. Whatever you take away from the kid, that they will just want 10 times more, and we'll get it when they're not at home, be it alcohol or the new drug of social media addiction. So yeah, I think Rambo was up here saying that you just have to sort of shepherd, and I think a lot of responsibility is on the parent. It's wild when you're in the park or at a restaurant, you see like an 8-year-old or a 7-year-old sitting at the dinner whatever, at a cafe or restaurant table with their parents, and they're just, the parents give them the phone so the kid doesn't melt down, so they can amuse the child while they're just trying to have a moment of peace or have a conversation about whatever, versus interacting with said child and putting the foot down and saying, when we're at the dinner table, whether it's at a public restaurant at home, there is no phones. So I would just say it. I don't know if I think the ban's extreme.
Yeah, but you gotta lead by example, How many times have you been out to a restaurant and you see everybody's got the mom, the dad, the son and the daughter, they're sitting in the booth at the diner, and everybody's on their phone and nobody's talking to one another, and it's like, well, why are you even bothering going out to eat?
You read my mind, Gary. That was actually my next point, is that, well, it's like, right. It's like, but then the kids are emulating the parents that are, I'll take it further. I've been at restaurants where I've actually seen parents on the phones and the kids just staring at each other, playing with their napkins or something. And I'm sure some of it is work related, or, did I get that interview? Maybe dad or mom's paying a quick bill online, but yeah, you're right. You're 100% right. It's completely hypocritical to say that adults are not, forget about even, walking, spending time with your family. But
how many of us are on call, emergency surgeons How many of us are on call? Right. How many of us are on call homicide detectives? How many of us are on call Homeland Security or FBI? How many of us are? Are there?
Yeah. Pretty small percentage, and I'll just, I'll finish with this, and it's not just, it's when teenagers are seeing parents, and I'm not just talking about a full-grown adult in their 30s, 40s, or 50s crossing the street, oblivious that they're jaywalking against a red light, but they got their head buried in TikTok on their phone, but they're pushing a stroller with them. like sometimes I just will actually say something. I'm like, can you do it? Can you cross the street with your baby without looking at the phone? And they just give me this, you can imagine this leer, this or this. Or sometimes they get mad. Sometimes they actually put their phone right away, and they're like, yeah, they get it. They're being completely irresponsible. So that's it.
It's just amazing the number of times.
It's wild. This is how we're
here in New York City. Here in New York City, how many times people have bumped into me?
Yep.
I mean, it's my responsibility to get out of your way.
Get out of their way. That's right.
Right.
That's right. How dare you? How dare you have the audacity to expect a grown adult to look up from their phone and acknowledge another human being or car or bike or what have you is coming in their path? Let Moses part the sea for this cellular use. Thanks.
Thank you, Moose. We miss you. Harsh, followed by Ed.
Thank you, Gary. I just want to say, before I begin, I'm from India, half Russian and stuff. So, and thank you for being here. And I also want to say one thing, that you guys can interrupt me. Gary, Alan, and Scott, anyone can interrupt me before anything I say. So I just want to say one thing. I'll say it in the comparing of India, because people out here using, all those children use this app. You guys have a different view about those things, that if a children is watching on the social media, then they are mad, they will be having all those thinking and different thoughts out there. But I want to say that if a children is using a social media, if you allow that, and that's a different danger to a parent as well, not in terms of if their child memory or anything is intellectual or thing is being in a danger, but their parents their parents the money and all those, their parents privacy also is in a danger, because that's a cyber crime, and we are facing out there in India right now, and that could come to America as well, because I have heard all those stuff that Indian things and Bangladesh and all those stuff, these guys are scamming out there to American people. So what we are facing, let me tell you guys what we are facing right now in India. So if anyone, just for an example, if there is an Apple, is a company called Apple, right? So they are legit. They have all those stuff. They are good locked up. About all the HTTP, DCP, DCC, that nobody can hack them. But what about their vendors? They are also locked up, man. Nobody can hack them. But what about their vendors? That's how the hacker get all those people. Same case to the children's as well. So if children's go to social media, post all those stuff, man, that's very, very, very easily they can get to the parents. I can give you a live example of how. Just take an example of MobiWik. I don't know how many people know about the MobiWik hack. MobiWik was an app for the payment stuff, and the hackers didn't hack them because they were weak and they were soft about their all the security, because they were hacked because of their vendors. Their vendors they didn't have that much security as much as MobiWik. So same thing goes to the children's as well. Children go to the social media and they can post all the stuff, photos, videos. That's the small stuff. They can also just go to social media and talk to any people, sharing anything. I don't know, but if they do it and like just that's the I think that's a big stuff if they talk to anyone. But even if they share anything, and even if they're not, even if they're just scrolling out there, that's a big threat as well because people like hackers, like I see out there in India, Bangladesh. Not in India. I respect India. They don't do that one. Bangladesh and stuff. That's the easy target to the American or any country or anyone. If a children has a social media page, in Instagram page, that they share stuff and they do stuff, and let's bring AI in that stuff. You know, if AI is there, that's the easy thing to blackmail or do anything. They just
Gershon, I'm going to interrupt you only because we have 60 seconds left, and I want to give Ed 60 seconds, okay?
So sure. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks.
I just want to
Thank
say
you. Thank you.
Thank
Ed, I'm sorry, but I will give you 60 seconds.
Okay,
I just want
well,
to say
okay. Well, I think it's a good thing to ban it, but unfortunately, that's probably just the first step to later on, ask adults for ID in order to use the internet and, all that biometric stuff and things like that. So uh, that's the downside. And if I have a magic wand, I will heal computers, the internet, social media, everything. No Clubhouse, no OnlyFans, whatever. Because humanity is going down the toilet, and for the sake of humanity, I think we will be better off without all this technology. We won't have the China problem. We won't have the Palantir and all those freaks that are, threatening humanity. AI will be gone. So, yeah. Thank you, Gary.
Oh my God, he wants to take OnlyFans away. Thank you, Ed. Folks, we're here Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock New York time, so until 5 o'clock New York time tomorrow for the next edition of the Critical Thinking Forum. Everybody be safe, be well, and peace out.
The Moynihan Pan report spoke about welfare dependency as a symptom of divorce, separation, and illegitimacy among poor urban blacks. In the decades that followed, these programs became a major cause.
I will die knowing I will never come across that in a black man. I'm so fucking confused.
Yeah, Isaac, you know, it takes a certain amount of intelligence to be able to recognize and steer clear of bad people. And, you know, and some people just don't have that ability, you know, or there, a lot of it, when it comes to issues of romance, they just, their desire to find a relationship overwhelms. And this is women especially fall victim to